The Jared Goodell Show, streaming online at 1370WFEA.com.
Coming up on 7:50 on your Thursday morning. Good morning to you. Jared Goodell alongside, waking you up, getting you prepared for the conversations of the day. 844-94-JARED, the number to call, 844-945-2733. Gets you in on the conversation this morning. The whole show podcasted up at 1370WFEA.com. You can find yesterday's podcast. Today's will be up before noon. A big story today, of course, this tragic story out of Virginia. A reporter, 24-year-old reporter Allison Parker, shot on live television. Her cameraman, 27-year-old Adam Ward, also shot by a former co-worker. This tragic story developing over the last 24 hours. We've learned a lot about the gunman. We've learned a lot about the two who were shot and killed, and described as just really amazing and great people. But something that we haven't talked a lot about, that we haven't heard a lot about, is how other reporters across the nation are feeling after this tragedy. Number one, they have to report on it. But number two, they're also reporters who are out in the field, and my guess is have some worry that this could happen to them. Something tragic like this could happen to them. Please join me in welcoming Joce Sterman to the program, a reporter with WJLA in Washington, D.C. Joce, thanks so much for coming on this morning. Good morning to you.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
So I wanted to talk with the reporter, and specifically one from the area, WJLA, the station you work for, several hours from WDBJ. But my guess is, and you can elaborate on this, is that being so close to that, the impact on you and your colleagues, probably much greater than maybe journalists here in New Hampshire or in other places across the country.
Well, the town where this happened, Manita, is not a big town. It's the kind of town where you would assume something like this wouldn't happen, and that's something very cliche that journalists say, but you have to kind of go into the mindset of these reporters. They work in a team. They work on the morning show. In my mind, when I looked at what happened yesterday, I thought about these two and the routine they would have gone through yesterday. They had what you would consider, a feature story, something that they would go into very positively, something where they're not feeling at risk or that there is the potential for harm to come into them at all. It's just not the mindset at all on a story like that. You sort of steel yourself in certain situations for the potential that you will be harassed, that people won't be happy to see you, that you're going into an area that maybe isn't going to be the friendliest to the press. But yesterday, in my mind, was not one of those scenarios for them. Definitely not in the town they were in, definitely not the story they were on. So I think that's what makes it even more difficult. Is that they're just utterly unprepared in that moment for what happened to them because their guard is totally down in a story in a town like that. On a day like that, when you just assume it's going to be routine, easy, positive, fun morning show shift, basically.
A reporter from WJLA down in Washington, D.C., just a couple hours outside of where this tragedy took place. Joce with us on the line, Joce Sterman, a reporter. Let's talk about what reporters have to go through on a daily basis. You kind of alluded to it there, that in sometimes reporters have to go in and on to stories live in the field that people don't watch you at, and that sometimes the reporter is the target. This is something that sometimes reporters have to deal with. What is that fear level like?
It's something we just get used to. I would never want to compare us to professionals that consistently put their lives on the line. That's something that they are familiar with. They're armed to handle, and we know it's a reality of our job. News does not happen in the newsroom. It may be assembled there, but to go out and find out what happened requires us going out into the world and meeting people who may or may not be happy to see us, and you just sort of prepare yourself for that. I'll be frank, I think many reporters are in denial about the fear level. I personally handle investigative projects, and there are many stories that we work on that people do not want covered, and the potential is there when you knock on someone's door or when you go into a neighborhood to try to find someone who doesn't want to be found. There is the potential, and you just sort of prepare yourself for it. You accept it as a reality, and you go into that situation, and just like it was yesterday, the camera is your only asset. Rolling all the time, having the camera on, that's what protects you. That's what often keeps the press safe. Yesterday is what helped to catch a killer in this situation because the camera continued to roll. that's our protection. And you just sort of get used to it. You accept it as a reality of the job that you should be aware of what's happening. You sort of read the mood of people, who wants you there, who doesn't. You keep the camera rolling in case something happens, and you hope that that'll be enough to keep you safe. There's really not much we can do about it. We're not armed. We go out into the field just with the camera, the notebook, and the microphone to ask people questions and try to get their reactions to things that have happened. And, you hope for the best, and you realize that there's the potential. Sometimes people are not going to want to see you, and you just have to deal with it as the situation pops up. But yesterday, I feel like the thing you have to keep in mind is when you're live on television, your photographer is focused on you and who you're interviewing. He's getting the video that he needs. They're going to try to watch your back and see what's happening. But in that moment when you are on, you have tunnel vision, just like I'm sure these two had. In that moment, when they say go in your ear, in your IFB, you go, and you're paying attention to what's happening. You're not looking at the people. In the moments before you're live, you're keeping an eye on who's around. You know that some yahoo might jump in front of the camera or come behind you. But when they say go, camera's on, you're ready, and you're focused on the person you're talking to, the news you need to deliver.
Joce Sterman with us, reporter WJLA in Washington, D.C. for an ABC affiliate there. Our ABC affiliate here in New Hampshire yesterday seemingly took all of its reporters off the road for its 5 and 6 o'clock newscasts last night, maybe because they're fearful of a copycat attack. Did your news station do that? Were reporters allowed to go out on the street for live reports yesterday evening?
Reporters did go out into the field and reported live, not only from the scene of where this tragedy happened, but from other locations on various stories from D.C. all the way down to Manita, Virginia, where this happened. But I do know, based on my interactions with lots of colleagues across the country, many newsrooms did that. I have a friend in Chicago. The edict was laid down last night, no live shots, at least for yesterday, and they didn't do them out of fear. And somebody wrote this yesterday on Twitter, and it hit home for me, is that the best tribute that we can make to these reporters and journalists who were killed yesterday is to keep on reporting, to keep doing our jobs, and to keep safety in mind. But I personally am not willing to let the fear of this stop me from doing a job that I really consider a privilege and an honor. And, we all want to keep safety at the top of our minds, but I really think we need to stay committed to staying out there, doing our jobs the way that these two bravely did every single day to bring, the world into people's homes. And there may be newsrooms that stop doing live shots for a while. I completely understand. I would challenge that personally.
Joce, one last quick question for you here. We know that the gunman who murdered the cameraman and the reporter, we know that he formerly worked at this TV news station, WDBJ, and that he had problems with every place that he worked at. He wasn't an easy guy to work with. Being in the entertainment industry, a different world, radio, sometimes people in the media industry just have difficult personalities, and feuds happen. Is that something that happens in TV, where sometimes egos clash inside the building and people hold grudges, career moves happen? Is that something that happens a lot in TV?
I don't think television is any different than any business in America. There are people who want to succeed, people who want to be roadblocks to the process, and I don't think TV is any different than any other industry in terms of people with egos are any different. I know that's a common theme about television, is that the egos get in the way and the personalities are there. Certainly people in television have big personalities, or at least some of them do, but I really don't think they're any different. And I'll say, we did a lot of investigative reporting related to Vester Flanagan yesterday, looking at his history at this station, and it was clear there were warning signs he was a problem to his colleagues, and had consistent complaints not only about how he was treated, but also the company back at him in terms of him being very volatile. And that's a situation I have not encountered very often in my career at all.
Joce, thanks so much for joining us this morning. We got to run. And thanks for continuing to do the work that you do. Thanks so much.
My pleasure. Thanks.
Thank you. All right, more on this story, more headlines to come this morning. Good morning.
More Jared after the break.